Wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With the blossoming bowl we'll drink unto thee. Wassail, wassail.
One Christmas was so much like another. In those years around the Seatown corner, now and out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices,
Sing another song.
I sometimes hear a moment before sleep. That I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6.
All the Christmases roll down toward the two-tongued sea, like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice edge, fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I can find.
In goes my hand into that white wool, bell-tongued hall of holidays, resting on the rim of the carol-singing sea. And out come Miss Prothero.
Fire!
And the firemen. It was on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing in Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, though there were no reindeer, but there were cats.
Patient, cold and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible-whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white back garden walls. And the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasin trappers from Hudson Bay, off Mumbles Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared.
We were so still, Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal, ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry. Or, if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. Fire! Cried Mrs. Prothero, and she rang the doorbell.
And we ran down the garden with the snowballs in our arms toward the house. And smoke, indeed, was pouring out of the dining room, and the bell was bombulating, and Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin like a town fire in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house laden with snowballs and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying,
My goodness. Oh,
and smacking at the smoke with a slipper.
Call the fire brigade!
Cried Mrs. Prothero as she rang the bell.
they won't be there. It's Christmas.
There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he were conducting.
Do something.
He said, and we threw all our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box.
We called the fire brigade, and soon the fire engine came, and 2 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house. And Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. Nobody could have had a noisier Christmas Eve. And when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them. She said the right thing, always. She looked at the two tall firemen in their shining helmets, standing amongst the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said,
Would you like anything to read?
Years and years ago, when I was a boy, it snowed and it snowed. But here a small voice says,
It snowed last year, too. I made a snowman, and my brother knocked it down. And I knocked my brother down. And then we had tea.
but that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from white wash buckets down the sky, it came shawling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and the hands and the bodies of the trees and settled on the postman, opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white horned Christmas cards.
Were there postmen then, too? Did they bring presents?
Yes, there were useful presents. Engulfing mufflers. Of old coach days. And mittens made for giant sloths. Blinding tam o' shanters like patchwork tea cozies and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes. From ants who always wore wool next to the skin, there were mustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the ants had any skin left at all. And once, I had a little crocheted nose bag from an ant, alas, now no longer whinnying with us, and pictureless books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate on Farmer Giles' pond, and did, and drowned, and books that told me everything about the wasp, except wine.
Go on. The useless presents.
Bags of moist and many-colored jelly beans, and a folded flag, and a false nose. Never a catapult. Once by mistake, and no one could explain, a little hatchet, and a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound. A mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make foolishly out. And easy hobby games for little engineers, complete with instructions. Easy for Leonardo, and a whistle to make the dogs bark to wake up the old man next door, to make them beat on the wall with a stick to shake our picture off the wall. And a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth, and you stood at the corner of the street, and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette. And then with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under balloons.
Were there uncles like in our house?
There are always uncles at Christmas. The same uncles. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlors. There was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert strings. And cats in their furabouts watched the fires. And the high-heaped fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlors without their collars. Uncles almost certainly trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. For dinner, we had turkey and blazing pudding.
Mothers, aunties, and sisters scuttled to and fro bearing tureens. Now Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Aunt Dosey had to have 3 aspirins. But Auntie Hannah, who liked pork, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard singing like a big bosom thrush.
When I'm calling you.
And some few small aunties, not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edge of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break, like faded cups and saucers. I would go out, my bright new boots squeaking into the white world, to call on Jim and Dan, and to pad through the still streets. And I remember that we went singing carols once. At the end of the long road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled up the darkness of that drive each night. Each of us was afraid, and all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as old and unpleasant, and maybe web-footed men wheezing in caves. We reached the black bulk of the house.
What should we give a heart to Harold?
No, good King Wenceslas. I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. And we began to sing. We stood close together near the dark door. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the face of Stephen. And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who has not spoken for a long time, joined our singing through the keyhole.
Good King Wenceslas.
And when we stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated under the water bottle, pumping gas. Everything was good again. And shone all over the town. And then, at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the center of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum because, after all,
It's only once a year.
Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, and another uncle sang Drake's drum. Auntie Hannah, who had gotten into the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, and another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again. And then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill, and hear the music rising up from them, up the long, steady, falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept.
I my loving vigil keeping all through the night.